Welcome to another episode of Bowcast. This is the archery podcast with the new school archer in mind. Bowcast covers everything from tips, techniques, and archery technology that will help raise your success in the field. And now, here is your host, covering the straight shot, Carrie Zilka.
Welcome to another episode of Bowcast. I am your hostess, Carrie Zilka. Today, we are talking to Deu-Ngoc from Bowdometer. A very, very interesting item that I found reading through the Archery Wire, came across it, checked it out, and said, oh my gosh, I got to interview this company because it looks really, really interesting. Before we get into the interview, I just want to remind everybody that we do have new merch, bowcast.net/merch. We'll get you all the t-shirts, hoodies, beanies, everything you could possibly want to outfit your wardrobe with. So, anywho, to the interview. Joe, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks very much for having me, Carrie.
So why don't you, so Bowdometer is what we're talking about, among other things, but why don't you explain to the listeners what the Bowdometer even is?
Sure. So the Bowdometer is a device that attaches to any bow and helps you track your practice, maintain your gear, and compete with your friends. The intent is to really get people to start shooting more frequently, start engaging more with other people, and really just have fun.
So it's a device. Just watching the video here. But how does it work? Like, it walk through the steps? Let's talk. Wait. First, let's talk about how it attaches to the bow, because I know a lot of people are worried about weight, additional weight.
Yep.
So explain how it actually attaches to the bow itself.
Absolutely. So we have a universal mounting piece that can either attach to a bow using self-fastening straps or Velcro straps, if you want to call them that, or using a bolt that you can attach to any of your stabilizer holes, or even if you have a spare hole for your plunger. If you're a recurve person, then you can use that hole. But it's a standard screw that you'll find in most archery setups, 5/16 number 24, and basically you have a lot of flexibility with doing whatever you want to attach. The intent behind it was to make it easy to do, so you don't have to glue it or go through like a complicated calibration process or whatnot. We just want you to slap it on there and basically be able to start shooting within minutes. So that's really the short of it. If you need more details, I'm happy to walk through them.
Well, let's talk about what data the Bowdometer actually records.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, some of the stuff I mentioned, there is a huge question about the how, and a lot of the how is part of our secret sauce, right?
Sure,
but I'll tell you right now, like the Bowdometer is composed of a whole bunch of different motion sensors. So you'll hear the term IMU thrown a lot in the tech community, and it is a motion sensor that detects acceleration in 3 axes. It detects rotation in 3 axes, and then in addition to that, we also throw on what's called a magnetometer. And a magnetometer, you could think of it almost like an electronic compass. So with all of this information, you can effectively have a rendering of the device in 3D space. So if you can imagine, let's say you visualize the device on a screen or whatnot, and you tilt it to the right, then on the screen you should be able to see the device tilt to the right because all of the data around the rotation and how fast you're moving is being captured. Now, if you kind of extrapolate that to a bow, think of that device now mounted anywhere on your bow. To be able to, have the device tilt to the right, that would imply a certain movement from the bow, right? So let's say you have it mounted on a stabilizer hole and you were to see the device tilt to the right. Well, that means the entire bow would have had to tilt in that direction. And we would be able to extrapolate all of that and, figure out what's going on with the bow. And the intent there is to be able to translate this back, because if we're able to capture the full movement of the bow, we should, at some point later, be able to convert that to how an archer can move themselves in order to get that particular movement out of the bow, right? So that's kind of that high-level concept.
So if I'm using it and my bow's canting to the right and you're saying so if I don't realize that it's canting to the right, even though, I have my level on there, but I don't know, sometimes I don't watch it. There's 93 things going on when you're shooting your bow. And if I don't realize that I'm canting just a tiny bit, this will tell me after my practice session is done, so that the next time I can be like, oh, okay, let's be more cognizant of making sure my bow is level. Correct?
That's correct. And
okay.
It's good that you use that canting example, because over the past year, we've kind of opened up what we're calling our Bowdometer Open Platform. So what we've done there is all of the data that Bowdometer collects, it actually goes real time to your mobile phone, and any app sitting on your mobile phone can access that data. In addition, that data also goes to the CloudPath platform. So if you're a trainer, a coach, or whatever, you're going to be able to see exactly what your students are doing, right, on that back end, right? You're going to be able to do live interactions with a lot of other people. But anyway, rewinding back to Artemis, the real-time data that's coming over, Artemis itself is going to use that real-time data directly. And one of the first features coming out will be that bow cant training that Marcel's been working on.
It kind of, I don't know, it fascinates me. Because I'm like a total tech nerd, and anything that I can use to help me become a better bow hunter or archer, obviously, is something anyone listening to this podcast is interested, because that's the whole purpose of this podcast.
Mm-hmm. And fantastic. We love tech nerd.
Yeah, really, seriously, the people that listen to this podcast are way more technical probably than most of the other podcast listeners out there. So I guess okay. So say I've used it for a year, and I'm just kind of trying to wrap my head around the benefits. Obviously, there are surface benefits, like real high level benefits. Oh, okay, it might help with the form, or I might be getting stronger, so my speed is increasing. I might want to think about, upgrading my limbs or whatever the case may be. What do you think would be the biggest issue that this device would help an advanced shooter with? Say an Olympic shooter. Would this benefit them to use?
Absolutely. So
okay.
One of you've probably heard of a guy named Crispin Duenas. He's on Canadian archery team. He's an Olympian, probably one of the best shooters in the world. And he's been using this for the past year or so. He started in our beta, and he's actually been able to see his numbers improve. So last year what we introduced was this metric. It's a very simple metric. Well, simple in terms of what gets displayed on the screen, but it's called psi. And what it does is it has a math function that computes a simple number between 0.0 and 99.9, and it displays that for you on the screen. There's some math involved there to kind of push everything toward 50. So you'd have like a reference shot of 50. And when we first started with Crispin, we were noticing that, other people were having this number swing by, let's say 10, 20 points, right? And experienced shooters. With Crispin, we were noticing that his numbers were only swinging by, let's say, 0.1. Now, this number, we call it a consistency metric, but it's essentially comparing shot to shot. If you can imagine a graph of your shot and you take two shots and you overlay them, if they're identical, right, then the psi number that comes out will always be the same. With Crispin, we are only getting a 0.1 variance, right, between the numbers. Yeah, with other archers, like I said, there was a 10-point variance. Now, for Crispin last year, it wasn't all that useful because the variance was so small. He doesn't necessarily know if there's like this tiny tick that's occurring that that he needs to work on. Right now, we decided, okay, well, you know what? We actually have a lot more data than what we're giving you right now. Why don't we zoom in on that data? So we introduced this concept called psi leveling. And what happens there is with the data, when we do our compute, we just give you more of the decimal places and we consider more of the decimal places, right? And then you can essentially just keep bumping up levels as your consistency gets even tighter. So we saw that Crispin, once we introduced this thing, he was jumping up levels like within a few days. Like he was jumping up all the way to level 5 or so, and then we're like, oh man, this is really good. He finally got to level 8, and he was more or less at level 8 for, I would say, about 8 months or so. And this helped him in that he was able to kind of pause and kind of reconsider what did he actually do in those moments and how are those shots actually different? Because it gives you an indicator that something is different, right? It doesn't necessarily tell you what yet, right? We're not at that point, but the data to be able to make that assessment is there. And eventually either we will do it or someone else using our open platform will be able to drill down and say, hey, there's an issue there. Right? But with Crispin, he was able to tighten his size spread at level 8 to within 2 points over 8 months. Right? So that is the sort of thing that an Olympic level archer is going to be able to do. Right? He's going to be able to basically be introspective about whatever he or she is doing and be able to address it.
Wow. Okay. Would you suggest this for the brand spanking new shooter? I would think that, the first, 200 shots are going to be all wonky anyway because you're kind of figuring it out and learning how to shoot to begin with.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Would it be
Absolutely.
like information overload almost? It's overwhelming to begin with.
Well, this is the thing. This is part of the reason why we do have, all those levels, and we try to make this number very, very simple, right? Because the thing is, for a new shooter, they can come on and they can stay at level 1, for a while. They could stay there for like a year. But the moment that they get to level 2, there's going to be this feeling of accomplishment, right? That they are getting better, right? And the numbers are there to show them that they're getting better if they got to a point of understanding what those numbers meant, right? So it's really a tool to track that practice and track that progression, right? Because again, all of the data is stored from, you can just imagine a 3-year-old who fires their first bow, and they get to 11 or 12 and start entering their first archery competition, right? To have all of that data, for that 9-year journey is going to be pretty amazing once you step through and look at the graph and see, hey, you're progressing, your spreads are getting tighter, and then be able to look at how this data compares to your friends, for example, right? So that whole social aspect is very important to most people. When Fitbit first came out, most people they didn't really understand why anybody would care about counting steps. But
Right.
now with this particular tool, well, you're counting arrows, you're socially connected to your friends, and you can start like looking at how each other's doing, and then progressively get better, right? And start leapfrogging each other and whatnot. And that's one aspect of that training connectivity competition. Competition just generally makes people better, right? And that's what we want to do. We want to make it fun. We want to keep people connected, especially in these times when people can't meet face to face. And we're doing it all with this very simple device.
Neat. Is it customizable, or is it just kind of a one platform fits all?
So we actually provide customizations across the board.
Okay.
I mean, our whole thing is openness, collaboration. I told you earlier about the mount that we ship with the product. We actually provide a 3D model and plans on our website. So if you have a 3D printer, you can go print a mount. You can go modify those plans to make whatever mount you want. Let's say you have a crossbow and you can't find an appropriate place for it, but you want to do a little Picatinny mount or Weaver mount or whatnot. You can go and do that. We actually already have some of our guys who have made some, and they'll probably be happy to share it with you and whatnot. But we got all that going. We have vinyl print plans for if you want to, let's say, customize the look of the product. With respect to the app, our app, we just launched version 2.0 of our app, and it's a night and day difference for those who have used the previous app. Bigger focus on social, achievements, community, and it also introduces that Bowdometer open platform, which I mentioned to you, Marcel and Artemis, like they're already using it to integrate with their own thing, but we have a developer program where anybody who, knows how to write code or knows how to, whip up a quick little app for Android or iPhone will be able to go and access that Bowdometer open platform live on the device and do whatever they want with it. And if you know how to code for web stuff, then, you can access our REST API on the back end and do stuff with that. So there are so many possibilities, and we've opened it up. It doesn't cost you anything to use that open platform. We really just want people to start using it more and seeing what cool things they can do.
Neat. What would you say is the most interesting thing someone has told you that they have accomplished or noticed after using the Bowdometer?
Oh, well, actually, we had one person actually able to detect an issue with one of the limbs on their compound bow. So they were shooting, and they were getting relatively consistent numbers, like let's say a swing of about 10 points, and then they one day they went to the range, and suddenly their swings were 15, 20 points, and in different directions and whatnot, and they had no idea what they were doing differently. They took it in to the shop, which was right beside the range, and the bow repair person looked at it and said, "Hey, there are some there's a loose cam here, and this limb needs to be readjusted." They readjusted it, and their numbers went back to normal. So to me, that's really cool, right? Because that's basically using it to maintain that gear, right? And it's things that any archery shop or coach would say, maintain your gear, change your strings, wax your strings, tighten up those limbs, adjust those cams, da-da-da-da. Here we have a tool that will actually be able to remind you to do those things. And there are potentials for service-based businesses that come out of this, right? Because now you can just think about the car industry. Well, selling a car isn't a one-shot deal. Most dealerships, they want to sell you the car, but they also want you to come back for that service, right? To keep that car, running well and good and new and whatnot, and they want to sell you other things after that as well, right? So you can just imagine in the e-commerce world where you're not necessarily going to be competing on price anymore, right? Because again, if we're being honest, most people cannot compete against Amazon on price, right? But one thing you can compete on Amazon is service, right? Your local bow shop now can say, hey, after 1,000 shots, why don't you bring that bow that I just sold you back in, right? You're buying a $2,000 bow. Here's a device that'll help you maintain that equipment and keep it in good shape. Bring it back in after 1,000 shots. We'll tighten your cams for free or something like that, right? There are a lot of potentials for building these new service type businesses out of it, and I really do see a lot of, but pretty much any industry going more into that whole service type of business in order to compete, right? Because no one wants to compete on price, right? That's kind of a 1950s way of thinking.
Sure. That's so interesting. That's crazy and very, very cool. How did the concept of this even come up? How did you come up with the idea for the company itself? Okay,
so cool story. I mean, Marianne and I, we've been in tech. We actually do. We've actually done wireless tech for the past 20 years or so, each of us, and we were doing essentially engineering consulting after we both left our previous roles. And a person came in and we started talking about archery, and he kind of said, "Wouldn't it be cool if there's a way to automatically count arrow shots?" And I kind of said, "Well, doesn't something like that exist? Because that doesn't seem like rocket science. Like something like that should exist." But anyway, that's how it started. Marianne and I, we dug into it, and we found that, hey, this is actually something that we should look into doing because no one's actually done it. And right now we can honestly say we're the best arrow shot counter on the market, right? But again, there are a few products out there that automatically count shots, right? So it started with that shot counter, and it kind of morphed into a what else can we do? Because we're capturing this data already, right? We're not just going to throw it away.
Right.
Let's see what else we can do. And then it kind of progressed into something a lot more.
How neat. That's really cool. Yeah, like I said, I just kind of came across it by accident. I was like, this is interesting. Let me check this out. And I'm assuming that your app is applicable for Android or iPhones.
That's correct. And that's kind of a big thing for us. I mean, we besides being open, we have to be available, right? So yes, Android and iPhone are supported on the app. Our open platform is supported on both platforms as well. So anybody could write an app for either one, and we'd be happy to continue that support. We kind of see that it's practically par for the course to be able to support, both platforms, right?
What do you think is your biggest question when you're explaining to people what the Bowdometer is, or if they come across it? What's your biggest question that people ask you?
So I think the biggest question is probably in and around that psi number, right? And the second one being, how do you count shots? The how do you count shots is something that's relatively easy to explain. The psi number, essentially we actually employ a data scientist. She's got a PhD in stats and various other maths, and we get that question. We try to make it somewhat in layman's terms, but it's very difficult to explain. And the best that I can do is say, take a look at two graphs, and if they match up, your sides are going to be the same. If they don't match up, we're going to have to do some compute to actually give you a number and and that's kind of where I leave it most of the time. But size is definitely the one question that's top of the list.
Wonderful. Well, very cool. Well, is there anything about the product that we didn't go over that you think might be relevant for the listeners to know?
Yeah. Let's see. What have we not gone over? I think that the main thing about the product is it is a global product, right? Like we do intend for everybody to use it, every age range, and everyone uses it for a different purpose, right? But we do want people to kind of go out there and shoot and have fun and, and get together. And really that's it. That's that kind of global community aspect of the product that we need to get out there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you had asked a question earlier, and I don't know if I answered it, but you asked about the weight of the product. The product is actually 11 grams. 11 grams. So it's like half an ounce or something like that. My imperial math is right.
Cool. Yeah, well, yeah, because it is a small, obviously with a podcast you can't show, I mean, people can go to Bowdometer.com and see it. It is a small little thing, and I didn't think it would weigh that much, but you just never know in this day and age. And I know that weight, especially when you're traveling or hunting, or it's a big deal for people, so that's good to know that it's lighter too.
Yeah, let me tell you, a lot of people have arrows that are heavier, so
sure.
So it's really down there. Yeah. So like you mentioned, if you want to know more about it, Bowdometer.com is probably the best place to go. And our social channels, we often have a lot of information, a lot of interaction with our users on the social channels. All of them are at Bowdometer, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or what have you.
Excellent. Very cool. Well, you answered my next question, so that's great. All right. Well, and I will make sure to link those in the show notes as well when I post this episode. So I do appreciate you taking the time. Everybody go check it out, Bowdometer.com. I thought it was a really neat little tool and one I'll have to put on my Christmas list here. So, well, cool.
All right. Awesome.
Well, Joe, thank you
Carrie.
so much for taking the time out of your day to talk to us about this.
Yeah, I really love talking to you. So you have yourself a great day.